you get up, you get a little bit downtown. Turn off the reins, tone your frown down. Step outside, catch your sundown. Put the pedal to the metal.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the ROH Retrocast here at Pro Wrestling Ponderings, where we go back in time and reminisce about the noteworthy, the unique, the bizarre shows in Ring of Honor's past. And we're back. We're going to cover what's going on in a Ring of Honor past show at the time, give our thoughts on the matches then and now, and have a whole bunch of good discussion in the process. It's been a while, been on an indefinite hiatus of sorts, but it's summertime. We've got some time on our hands, so we're back for a new one, and we got plans for a couple more before we go on another hiatus, doing things in bursts. But I can't do it alone, so let me introduce you to my fellow time travelers for this episode. First up, my co-host from Podcast of Honor and admin of the We Love Pro Wrestling Facebook group, web admin of Pro Wrestling Ponderings, GST. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Ari. Just enjoying the summer heat.
Yeah, restoring your galaxy in the summer heat using pulleys and levies.
Yes, absolutely. Just a lot of work going on my end. So.
All right, very cool. Next up, my brother from another mother, also a host at this point of the Podcast of Honor. Basically, this is just Podcast of Honor doing another podcast. But, he's also the admin of We Love Pro Wrestling Facebook group. And he's also a Brooklynite like me, Chris Miccio. Miccio, how are you doing today?
Doing good today, Ari. Doing good. Anytime I get to talk to you guys is always a better day in my book.
Absolutely. We're in like Flynn or whatever that saying goes. But we're back, guys. How's it feel?
It feels like we've been waiting a long time to do this and trying to figure out just the right show, because Ring of Honor is just in this weird transition period where there's a lot of excitement about their product and there's a lot of names that are back, that are being thrown around, that could come back. So we really wanted to pick the right show, right, Ari? I mean, it's not just any show that we can cover here on the Retrocast.
Well, we've been bouncing a number of different shows back and forth, but we finally came up with a good one here. But I want to thank, before we get started, I want to thank Stefan or Steven, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, Stefan. How about we're going to call him Bob? I'm just going to call you Bob. So thank you, Bob, for touching base. He's the guy partly responsible for us getting back into doing this, and I really want to appreciate him. Say thanks again to him for reaching out to us and getting us going on a couple of these things again. So this one is for you. And basically, we picked a show, I think, that has, just you look at the talent roster and it's stacked just top to bottom with names that are really important at this point, summer 2014, or just 2014 in general. Names like Cesaro and Generico, aka Sami Zayn, and Kevin Steen, and Matt Hardy, and Christopher Daniels, and AJ Styles, and even CM Punk, who, even though is not wrestling anymore, you all of these names are just like they've played such an interesting, intriguing part of 2014, and we're going to look at Fate of an Angel from right in the middle of Summer of Punk to July 2005, and they're all there on this card doing a lot of different things, but very interesting to look at it. So
let's not forget the most important name, Ari. Matt Hardy.
Well, I said Matt Hardy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just was making sure, because clearly.
Matt Hardy, when he was still actually welcomed by the ROH audience?
Yeah, a crowning hero at the time, because if you all remember, he was fired by the WWE after getting involved in some backstage stuff with Edge and Lita. Lita and Matt Hardy were in real life a couple, and apparently Lita had cheated on him, and there was some stuff going on that Matt Hardy had talked about, and WWE didn't like that he made it public, so they let him go, and he sort of became this cult hero, and was starting to make some independent dates, and just as we thought, like maybe he might do what James Gibson had been doing at that point, also on this show, which is to sort of like reinvigorate his career on the independent scene. And lo and behold, he shows up on a WWE show and doing this sort of guerrilla protest thing. He jumps the ring and he takes the mic and he says, if you want to see me, come to an ROH show. And then security chased him out. And now, obviously, guys, when you saw that, did you think that, basically something was up, that Hardy was coming back to WWE? Because that was like a clear signal to me that was happening.
Yeah, I think it was a fair statement. I think it was a fair statement to say that. I mean, why else would they allow? I mean, why else would they allow him to? If they knew he was in the building, they wouldn't have let him get close enough to the ring to jump it. And then when they let him get his hands on the mic and say it, it was almost like a quid pro quo kind of situation where they were letting, because Hardy had been not wrestling for a while previously to that as well. So it was an opportunity, I think, maybe that they looked at it for him to like knock the rust off a little bit by doing some of those indie shows before they brought him back for his, full scale feud with Edge.
Right. And GST, did you have something to say about that too? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just, I thought it was kind of a surreal moment. It just harkened back to the ECW invading Raw, or being invited to Raw. So be it. Just having that sense of WB saying, you know what, Ring of Honor, they're not exactly direct competition. This could be a lot of fun. It builds a certain an environment where the fans are like, holy crap, we kind of know that this is staged, but it's kind of cool. So, I mean, because I remember people talking about Raw after, and they're like, oh my God, Ring of Honor was mentioned on Raw. And it kind of brought some attention to the product. Obviously, we were all watching it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of cool. But, clearly you knew, okay, something's coming back. And you probably kind of knew that WWE was kind of like, okay, yeah, we didn't like that you made this public, but you kind of also got the short end of the stick in this situation, being released over
right.
it.
Well, this was sort of like, and then again, the ECW mention was exactly what I was going to go for, so I'm glad you made it. But, the fans, this is something that they really picked up from the internet, and the whole general fan base really kind of embraced, and it was really getting in the way of storylines. They started, really getting on Lita for her part in this and all that kind of stuff. So, I think this was sort of a way to solve the problem and get the fans to back on track with what they wanted to do, while at the same time bringing Matt Hardy back in the fold and co-opting him. And they have a pattern of doing this kind of stuff from time to time. But it was very interesting. And Ring of Honor had already signed him to three shows, and we were wondering what was going to happen. And we got word that yes, that Matt Hardy would fulfill his commitments. He would appear on all three shows. I think he also had a match against AJ Styles at this point on another independent show. I believe it was IWC, but I'm not sure. It was a long time ago. So he fulfilled his independent commitments and then went back to WWE. So we're in the middle of that time period where like everyone's like talking about Matt Hardy and really embracing him before his fall, and definitely a different reaction these days to him and Ring of Honor. The fans hated him in his last run, and we've talked about that on previous podcasts. Also, CM Punk is leaving. Maybe. I mean, he was supposed to leave. We all knew he had signed with WWE, and he had done a Sunday Night Heat appearance against Val Venus, and lo and behold, he was going to wrestle Austin Aries at Death Before Dishonor 3, and that was going to be his last title match. And no one wins on their last appearance, especially a title match. And lo and behold, CM Punk wins. He is the Ring of Honor champion, turns heel, kicks off the Summer of Punk, which a lot of people consider this time period to be the peak or one of the peaks of Ring of Honor's history. Creatively, everything was flowing with the fans just hating CM Punk and wanting to see someone take the title from him. And every week, you didn't know whether or not his appearance would be the last one until we got to about August 12th, 13th, where he had the Chicago shows, and then you kind of knew, okay, he's probably going to finish up in his hometown. But until then, it was a huge guessing game, and I thought this part of Ring of Honor was so much fun. This is definitely one of the points where Chris, Miccio, and I, we were touring all over the place trying to catch as many shows as possible. So we were invested in this. So, Miccio, what were your thoughts about the Summer of Punk, basically going into July of 2005, where Punk was the champion and you had a whole bunch of people trying to chase him?
It was one of the most insane periods of ROH history. It's every show seemed like it was going to surpass the next one as far as quality was concerned with the matches. At this point, I remember both of us just like fiending for whenever the DVDs would be released for the shows that we didn't get to. And that summer we did get to it. We did get out to a bunch of shows. So it was we kind of you'd get word on the boards about what had transpired at different events that you didn't see, and you just really couldn't wait to see what was going on. We had tried to get tickets to go to the show where Punk had won the title, or work our way to get out there, but we couldn't put that all together, and it was kind of disappointing. And then when we heard the results, I remember both of us were really disappointed that we weren't there to see what had happened. I remember when we toyed around with the idea of going up to this Connecticut show, and then when you secured a third man for our crew that evening to drive us up to the show, how excited I was to get the chance to see Matt Hardy in an ROH ring, especially that night, and to see James Gibson challenge Punk for the title, because at that point James Gibson was really firing on all cylinders. He was they say it a bunch on the DVD if you go back and watch it, that he was at that point the MVP of 2005 for Ring of Honor, and that was a really true statement. So he was just so in the zone, and then to see Punk doing his heel routine, it was really a sight to behold. The one memory that I really do hold of that night, and it came back to me brutally when I was watching the show, was that the venue was murderously hot, and I'm sure you remember it, and I'm sure you will maybe even mention it later. There was a time in the Matt Hardy Christopher Daniels match where Hardy has Daniels up on the top rope, and he chops him 2 or 3 times, and you see just like this a massive amount of sweat just flying off of him, and it was like that in the crowd too. I would say that I think it's a fair statement to say that the venue was close to 100 degrees for the majority of the night. We were fortunate enough that we had a guy sitting near us who had like a portable fan with him. So every once in a while he'd kind of like move, and we'd get a little breeze off that or whatever. But it was just a brutally hot night. And
this was inside a hockey rink.
There was no
closed off.
There were no fans up on the ceiling.
Oh, so... no. I have to correct you. There were fans on the ceiling. They just weren't working.
Oh, okay.
No one had turned them on, which had led to, I believe at several points, I don't know if they got caught on the DVD, but a lot of people were chanting at points, turn the fan on, clap, 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 clap. Because we saw the fans. We knew that if they turned them on, that it'd be a little bit better. And I think eventually they ended up turning on somewhat, but it really didn't help in the end. It's the crowd.
It was brutal.
It was too packed together. It was brutal. But it was quite the interesting experience, though. Go ahead.
By the time I remember seeing people buying like T-shirts during the show to change out of like sweat drenched T-shirts. But you know what? At the end of the day, it was well worth the quote unquote pain and suffering we had to endure in this oven of a venue to see an overall really great show.
Yeah, I'd agree. I thought the whole traveling experience was a lot of fun, and going to Connecticut, it was a different place and different venue. Some of the same fans that traveled up with us.
Just out of curiosity, how long was the drive?
What do you think about an hour and a half?
Hour and a half, yeah, 2 hours.
And we actually did drive past the WWE headquarters on the way to the venue.
Yeah, so that's always fun to do that. GST, Summer of Punk 2005. Where were you in your fandom, and what were you thinking of as CM Punk stole the title and dared anyone to give it back, threatened to leave for the WWE with the belt?
2005. I'd already started the live journal community, so I was pretty hyped for it. I mean, CM Punk, I never liked him in Ring of Honor in the sense of, like, I got his character. I understood the tag team of him and Colt Cabana were kind of the odd couple. I just didn't get it. I was like, okay, you don't do drugs, you don't drink. And obviously he was a heel, so I was like, okay, I get it. But he was obviously a good wrestler. I'd already seen him in IWA Mid-South. So when he won the title, I was happy for him. It was kind of shocking because even back then, like, I read the dirt sheets, quote unquote, but I didn't, you still didn't really expect it. You kind of knew it could happen, but, why would it? And then when he did, and he did the whole, he came out in the suit and he had that, well, he still had that weird purple hair thing going on. I was like, okay, this is kind of neat. I'd like to see where it goes. And I mean, yeah, it has to be up there in terms of not just because of guys from WWE coming in, but CM Punk really putting Ring of Honor, bring it to a different level, in terms of fan interaction. Because I noticed that during that time, you did get a lot of people going, oh, okay, this is actually pretty cool because it crossed those lines of, we know he's Ring Around Champ, but we also know he's going to the Fed. So what's going to happen? And each title match felt more important because you kind of wanted to be there to see the title change because you knew it was going to happen, kind of.
It had to happen.
The one thing that none of us have mentioned is that promo he cut after winning the title. Yeah,
being the snake and having Gabe chase him out, and or Jimmy Barrow, whoever that guy was, some dude.
But I mean, when we finally got to see that, that promo on the DVD, because we weren't at that show, that promo was mind-boggling. It was an amazing promo just to see how it played out. Yeah. So I mean, Punk was like so in the zone at that point. And when you go back and you watch a lot of those shows from that era, you really do see. I mean, yeah, the stuff before it was good, but that's really that transition where he goes from being, really good to being outstanding.
It definitely took things up to another level, and you just saw the crowd reaction at Death Before Dishonor 3, how much he had him in the palm of his hands, and it basically was that same way for every single crowd the rest of the summer. And the Connecticut crowd was no different. The Connecticut crowd wanted Punk's blood; they wanted him to lose. It wasn't to happen on this event, but I mean, it definitely. You had so many people being thrown in his way, from Samoa Joe to Gibson, Daniels. Even McFoley was there, not to wrestle, but to be sort of like as the word from WWE, and to force him into matches and to make him behave until he left for the WWE. There's a lot going on in the storyline.
Yeah, no, because there was a distinct feeling that, okay, Ring of Honor, even before the summer of Punk, you knew that they had good to great wrestling. You already knew that going in.
Yep.
But some of the storytelling, okay, we get it. You have the basic high flyer scramble matches in the beginning of the show, builds up to the pre-intermission kind of main event, really good wrestling. And then, Gabe's booking style, it's kind of two shows in one, which is very common, But then CM Punk was always involved in something that people kind of sunk their teeth into, especially with him being involved with Ricky Steamboat, and then the blood feud with Raven, and then him being part of Second City Saints against the Prophecy.
Yeah.
You kind of felt that CM Punk was always in this. He was the Raven, essentially, of early Ring of Honor. And there was some conversation, a couple months ago between me and some other people, and then it kind of grew, who would you put on the Ring of Honor Mount Rushmore? Punk has to be there, because out of most of the feuds going on in Ring of Honor before he left, his stuff was usually the most important, or the stuff, the most compelling. Because you had Samoa Joe, who was a great champion, and what's a defining Samoa Joe feud? It was with CM Punk. It was that trilogy. And if you think back to what else was going on in 2004, okay, you had the Rottweilers kind of taking over, so that didn't really involve Punk too much. They had a couple things, but Punk was always the most compelling thing going on. And then once he won the title and people knew where he was going, it was just kind of a perfect culmination of, this is the guy. Because who else in Ring of Honor could that have really worked with? You know what I mean? There really wasn't another talent that could have carried that storyline.
That's a great point. And it was the right person, the right personality, and at the right time. And no wonder that WWE would replicate some of those circumstances and do another version of this storyline in 2011. And again, with CM Punk as the center of attention. I mean, I think the guy is made for stuff like this. His persona and just his ability to talk to people, for sure.
And it's more that it's that heel persona that was just so like on point.
Well, it's interesting then that he was a face after the summer, during the summer of Punk in WWE. It was almost like the reverse of what they did here, where he took the belt here and people hated him, and people loved the fact that he stole the belt from the evil WWE corporation who was holding him down.
Right. So that was the thing. It was like the enemy in that whole equation was the WWE itself. Now the enemy and the funny thing is the enemy in the equation when Punk was leaving was also the WWE.
Yeah, how about that?
So it's him that did the change and not the enemy in the equation.
Interesting.
He sold out, and then as he was saying on this DVD, he cashed in.
He put in like Seth Rollins.
Exactly.
I
mean, I'm sure you guys got a kick out of it, watching this DVD and watching him come out for the pre-match promo, calling out James Gibson in the first part of this DVD. And those fans they really hate him. Like, there's that guy reaching over the guardrail to flip him off and saying, fuck you, Punk. And it's like, it wasn't just the guy having fun at the show. He really hated him. And I'm
GST, you talked about you didn't like him, but yeah, there were people.
No, I didn't like. I don't in the heel way. I didn't like him in the sense that I didn't. I knew he was a good wrestler. I didn't see him ever being world champion caliber because I felt that, to me, his whole stick of being straight edge was getting kind of old. It was like, okay, guy, I get it. You don't drink. What? And you were abused by your dad or whatever, who was an alcoholic. Okay, after 2 or 3 years, and he wasn't doing the same thing in IWA Mid-South, but he was kind of saying the same stuff. And it was like, after 2 or 3 years, is there something else about you? Is there anything else? And
I think this was not something else. This has nothing to do with him being straight edge. This has nothing to do with any of that kind of agenda. This was him, being the snake. Being the snake. All right. Let's get into the show.
One more thing before we can touch on it. Just Chris, to touch on what you were saying about how the vitriol that the fans had for him that night. Something happened after the show ended.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that, Chris.
The crowd hit Punk with a bottle.
Yeah.
Like a plastic Gatorade bottle or something like that. And Punk got so pissed he chased the guy out of the building.
That's right. We saw that.
That's hilarious.
We know for a fact he chased him out of the building because when we were leaving to go to the car, we saw Punk walking back on the road still in his wrestling attire. Mm-hmm. Like he had chased the guy legit from the building.
That's hilarious.
He was literally on a dirt road leading to the venue wearing his wrestling gear.
And that's something you don't expect to see.
That is funny. Why? He was just because of a bottle?
Punk and the fans.
Right, they'd been getting on him, and then they started throwing stuff at him in the ring, and then one of the things hit him. Yeah. And he saw the guy who threw it because the guy was right in the front row.
Oh, poor baby.
Punk has had a very interesting relationship with the fans, both on the independent scene and during his time in WWE. Let's not forget that. He's got sometimes he's a guy with a bit
of a short fuse, shall we say?
Yes. Mm-hmm. He's not quite an Austin Aries. Well, actually, he probably is. Anyway.
All right, guys, let's get into the show. We're going to do the time warp again. It's a jump to the left and a step to the right, and we are in Woodbridge, Connecticut, July 16, 2005. The whir of my DVD player as I loaded this up gave me quite a bit of pause. I was not happy to remember that all those older DVDs, they're a little bit fragile. The show opens up with Samoa Joe's promo about CM Punk's turn. Quote, "You fooled the world. He went one way and Punk the other." He talks about Punk's impact on Ring of Honor, winning the title, then disgracing it by signing the WWE contract on top of it. That happened at Sign of Dishonor a month before. Dave Prazak and Lenny Leonard are your commentators on the call. And the show opens up. The first match is Nigel McGuinness versus a guy by the name of Claudio Castagnoli. Not Claudio Castagnoli. as you might know.
What are you talking about, Ari?
Some
That's how
people
I
might
spell
know.
it. I don't know what your problem is.
It is a complicated name to spell, Ari. So give him a
No
break.
doubt, I was getting it wrong all the time, and when I wrote my column, but it was time to correct it. Well, I guess you don't even have to worry about it now because his name isn't Claudio anymore; it's Cesaro. But there are no entrances. There's no music shown as some of the earlier Ring of Honor DVDs to, I guess, save on space and time. They did not record some of the earlier pre-match, not pre-match, but like the preliminary match entrances were not shown. Claudio is dressed in a great purple and black tie outfit. He's got long flowing hair. Nigel's got the Billy Idol spike hairdo. I guess it turns out I am the fashion police. Because, wow, man, 2005 to 2014, both guys have definitely changed in look. And this is Claudio's first match in Ring of Honor ever. He was running the European uppercut as a motif even then. There's a couple of cool surprise schoolboy roll-up attempts from Nigel. He works the arm on the heat. He uses the rebound to fake out Claudio a couple times. So, again, sort of like the archetypal pieces that made Nigel rise up to be the Ring of Honor World Champion in the next couple of years, he was using here, but it wasn't really fully concentrated on. Big high spot was Claudio elevating out of a DDT attempt into the pop-up European, and Nigel gets the win with the Tower of London for 3. So GST, thoughts on Cesaro or Claudio Castagnoli and Nigel McGuinness?
I mean, it's a fun opening match, and it's weird to think that Nigel, when he first came here and he was in the HWA, that it was Les Thatcher that had to tell him, you know what, you're British. Utilize that British style because that's what makes you unique. And we saw it in this match, that kind of catch-as-can style during the kind of the roll-ups and the hammer locks, which Claudio obviously was very well versed in too, particularly that European style. So seeing the exchange, it was a good opening match and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, like you said, just the changes that you've seen them. I mean, I think most probably people that were watching Ring of Honor knew who Claudio was because Swiss Money Inc. was getting some notoriety here in the States for some of their shows in Europe. So, and when he debuted, because the crowd, you guys were, you saw it, they reacted well to him, like they already knew who he was, so they knew what to expect, and it seemed like a good match for the crowd to open up with. And then Nigel, getting the win, and we all know what happened for the rest of his career.
Miccio, this was Cesaro's first match in Ring of Honor, but had you seen some of his stuff in Swiss Money Holding, and what did you know about him coming in? And I guess when you were at the show, what did you think about what he did when he was live and in Living Color?
I think you and I had seen him on some other DVDs, like one or two other DVDs at that point. I thought he was interesting. I thought it was going to be interesting to see him, how he fit into the ROH picture at that point. It was the first time I saw him live and up close. I thought the match was good. It was a really good a good way to open a show with two guys who could definitely do the things that you needed to have to set the tone for the evening, if you know what I mean. I got to tell you, I thought looking back, it kind of reminded me that I thought the look, like, I understood that he was going for the the banker type look kind of thing, but it just didn't look good. You saw that he was jacked under the shirt, and you wondered why he wasn't, wrestling. You could wear that to the ring, do like, $1 Million Man, and take off the suit, and then you pull off, and you have trunks underneath. It kind of looked low budget to me. But then again, you have to go back and say to yourself, this was 2005. It's 9 years ago. You saw a lot of guys on the indies still working in non-traditional wrestling attire.
There is nothing wrong with Punk wearing gym shorts, guys. Come on now.
No. Listen, but he was the first. When you really think about it, it's like he was. You could tell. You can almost mark his career and say when he made that kind of turn towards maybe moving on. It was when he shifted from the gym shorts to the tights, and maybe somebody had said something to him about maybe it's time for you to kind of get a little bit more professional in the appearance if you want to generate the the attention from outside parties.
Well, same thing with
And
Cesaro. We saw him. I mean, you said he was jacked, but I mean, he was lean and muscular, but there was no, it was
not
not
the
anywhere
best.
near where he would how he would
Right.
develop his
He didn't have,
muscle growth
it wasn't as
in the
he
years to
wasn't as
come.
fast. Right, but
And
he
he
was
was
in great shape.
yeah, and he was also wearing the long tights and stuff.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
you think
no,
about
he
it,
was wearing
you know,
pants. He wasn't wearing tights.
oh,
There's a
I'm
big.
sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I mean,
Well,
he shifted from the pants to the tights, and it's like, you
right.
know, but at the time it was, the wearing that type of outfit was not uncommon, and that was one of the things that I kind of went back in my mind and thought about, and
Even
it's
Matt
true
Hardy
that
was
if you
wrestling with
right, but
kind
if
of
you
attitude.
look at like the landscape even on the indies today, in 2014, you don't see that as it's not as common anymore. You see guys who are on the indie scene, whether on the lower levels of the indies or all the way up to the top levels of the indies. You see guys who are really putting a professional twist on what they wear to make themselves even more presentable in that sense. So that was kind of like it's a stark contrast between now and then. I mean, as far as the wrestling was concerned, you see the seeds in both Claudio and in Nigel of what led them to the top of the card in Ring of Honor over the next few years.
I had seen Cesaro I bought a compilation of his stuff from Germany, and so I'd seen quite a bit of him and Aries and some of the other guys in Swiss Money Holding, and even I think Chris Hero was featured on that, because they were doing a lot of stuff early on, and I just had this feeling in the back of my head that it was Claudio who was the guy to look at, who would really go places.
Was that the multi-disc best of with like a gray cover?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have that one too.
Yeah, so it was like getting an early peek in at the potential of this guy, and I mean, you could say that with a number of guys on this show,
Absolutely.
including the guy in the next match, El Generico, aka, well, look, this is allegedly. I hear from my sources that he is sort of similar looking or is related to this guy named Sami Zayn on NXT, but look, I can't be 100% sure about that. So look, don't take my word for it. Don't go posting on Twitter that Ari Berenstein reported this. Look, I don't want to handle that. That's not my responsibility. Anyway, look, El Generico, who is getting a little bit of a run, both in Canada and in PWG at the time. He wrestles Austin Aries here in this match, the second from the bottom. Aries gets the full entrance shown. There is a code of honor. Remember, this is only about a month or so after Aries had lost the title, and he's getting face reactions and acting more of a babyface, even though Generation X hadn't fully turned babyface yet, and they were still running with this whole thing with Alex Shelley and Aries as enemies. And Shelley had been the babyface. They were hints that Generation X was turning babyface around this point. And they would very shortly. As for El Generico, yes, indeed, if we're talking about looks, he is looking very generic indeed in this one. His gear is super simple. He doesn't even have any logos on his tights. He is the generic luchador in this match, and it makes me think about all the times, all the things that he's done to sort of, when he was at the end of his run on the independent scene in Ring of Honor, all the logos and stuff he would put in, his cartoon, his image, the exclamation point. So, he again, someone came a long way from his beginning of his career. But this is a basic match for the most part. I thought Generico has a generic moveset. He hasn't stylized the lucha or many of his trademark moves yet. He does have a few things here and there, but it's essentially Aries versus a jobber, and Aries doesn't get much respect. The biggest shock I had from this match was that Aries delivered a corkscrew press to the inside followed by a cabrada combo, and I forgot that he would do that kind of aerial stuff in the match, and it was very cool to see. The finish is essentially Generico getting the murder, death, kill powerbomb and the Michinoku driver for close 2 counts. He blows the hold hand DDT that he does get the hoover kick for another near fall. He tried the 450, but there's no one home. And Aries comes back with what was his then traditional combo of the kick to the head, brainbuster 450 for the win. To me, it was clear Generico had a ways to go there during this match, but he would get there. He had a ways to go, but he would get there. And, overall, a decent match, not as good as probably it would have been if it took place a few years later. And Miccio, what did you think again about maybe about Generico at the time, and then watching this match right now in 2014?
Well, I'd seen him on a couple other DVDs at that point for ROH, so I knew who he was. So it wasn't like I was going in blind to it. He really did live up to the generic luchador name and character with the very generic mask and the very generic tights and boots. You could see that there was maybe something there. He had some sort of his moveset was, you said generic, but I didn't think it was really all that generic at the time. It was different. You saw that there was maybe some framework for something there, but you wondered how many, what kind of legs the character would have. How long would this be something that an ROH crowd, which was kind of fickle and is known to be fickle over the years, how long would they kind of put up with a character like that if there was no more depth to it? It's like watching the match. You see some of the like we said before with we're talking about Claudio or Cesaro, whatever you want to call him. When we watched that before, you saw the foundations of what would become a beloved character in ROH's history. And putting him in with a guy like Aries this early in his run, like you said, Aries being only a month or a month and a half removed from being the champion of the promotion, it really showed that the people in the back had a lot of positive thoughts regarding Generico to give him this kind of match, and that kind of struck me. And now looking at almost 10 years later, and then thinking about what we've seen from. I guess we're going to go with the idea that he of what you said before, from who he may or may not have become over the last year. It's really amazing, and talking about a guy who's really done the professional thing and really transformed himself, not just as a performer but as an athlete. It's amazing to see that how far it's gone, and the difference between looking at him in 2004 on this or 2005 on the show and what he looks like physically now in 2014. So it's really cool to kind of be able to look back and see something like this. And we're going to see it again when we talk about the next match also with involving Kevin Steen. So I enjoyed the match. Aries was, he was still really on fire at that point. So watching Aries and, I think at the time, I think maybe even at that show, Ari, you might have been wearing the Austin Aries Wrestling Machine t-shirt. And,
was I? I thought I might have been wearing the Captain Charisma shirt if I saw myself.
I don't know, because maybe you bought the Wrestling Machine T-shirt that night.
I don't remember.
But I remember you had the T-shirt with the gears on it and stuff like that. And
oh, okay. So maybe that was it.
He really was at that point. He was really, he was still on the top of his game, and it was a good.
You could say he was the ace of the Ring of Honor roster.
Oh, the ace.
Some people hate that moniker.
The ace.
GST, thoughts on Generico back then? Again, you being on the West Coast, I don't know if you managed to see anything from his work in PWG at the time, or if this was one of your earlier moments of watching him in the ring, and then thoughts on the match.
No. From what I remember from I seen him in CZW, and I think that's where a lot of fans on the East Coast had already seen him from.
Right, because Steve was also there. They were doing it together.
Right. I want to say they were in the Chikara Tag World Grand Prix. I think. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Generico and Steen in 2005. If I'm wrong, Kevin, I'm sorry. I have a horrible memory for this stuff. But I'd already seen him. I already knew what he brought to the table up to that point. And this was, to me, is kind of that prototypical Ring of Honor style match that when everyone talks about what the Ring of Honor style was, this was that. It was Aries and Generico. Aries, obviously a former world champion, and kind of I don't want to call Generico an up-and-comer, you know what I mean? But he kind of was for Ring of Honor, for the fans. And like Miccio and you said, didn't really know how they'd react to him because he's kind of different for what you'd expect to see. Obviously there were the flippy guys and kind of some fun stuff in Ring of Honor already, but here's a guy with his tights and his mask, and we're all like, okay, let's see what he can do. And this match, I think, kind of brought that out, and I'm pretty sure some of the people in the crowd were impressed with it. And I thought it was a lot of fun, and it gave Aries, who was kind of rebuilding himself. I believe they mentioned on the DVD that he had just lost to Joe at the show before this, a week before, and that was the first time Joe had ever pinned Aries. So Aries was also kind of like, okay, I've got to get back on that winning streak, especially since he's going for the title. And you didn't want to see him lose to someone like, Generico. Not saying that Generico's bad, but this was kind of, if Aries lost again, it would have been kind of weird. But I thought the match was awesome. I think that anyone who watches it would probably say, you watch it now in 2014, it still kind of holds up as a really fun match. And then now who both men are, Aries being prominent in Impact Wrestling for as long as that's going to last, it's a fun match to look back on. And I'm sure, to me, it seemed like the crowd, like you guys had a lot of fun, even though maybe Generico wasn't as well known. But I'm fairly certain, like I'm 100% sure that most people knew him from CZW already. And then, like I said, being in Chikara.
Yeah, I think fans got into the act, and even if they didn't know who he was, I think they were humored by it enough, and then the idea of to give him a lot of offense late in the match really did, kind of help give him some credibility late in the match, and made you think that okay, this guy, he might look like a joke, but you shouldn't take him as a joke, which is essentially the El Generico story for many years to come. Kevin Steen, Generico's best frenemy. Kevin Steen versus Homicide versus Dixie versus Azrael in a four-corner survival match. The match that killed Dixie. Not Dixie Carter. That would be 10 years later. I remember live Homicide absolutely killing the guy on the cop killer at the finish. But on tape, I don't know. It seemed like Dixie took the move well, and it was just good post-match selling. But live, I was cringing like hell. Again, you look at the physique differences from then to now. Kevin Steen, he's clean shaven, he's significantly leaner, he's got thinner arms, but he does have a confident, kind of cocky attitude coming out. So even then, you sort of had an idea. I think he had an idea of where he wanted to go, and where he would go with his persona, and he's just very young at that point, and so it really wasn't fully formed. Homicide had J-Train and the Ghetto Forks. Miccio,
those were awesome.
Ghetto Forks.
Ghetto Forks, yeah, baby.
That was so awesome to see him coming out with both forks in hands, and
he's doing like the lie back, feed me more thing, like where he's waving his arms in the air with the forks, and it kind of looked cool.
Well, it's that whole Abdullah the Butcher kind of thing that Homicide kind of utilized with his thing. So having both forks in his hands, I come on, that was awesome. Sure. So I miss J-Train.
Oh, we all do, man. Also because it always comes late. But anyway, Homicide beat Steen with a lariat at New Frontiers, and Azrael and Dixie were former tag partners in Special K. So that's basically the divide in this story. Homicide and Steen just destroying each other in a brawl. Azrael and Dixie doing their thing with some flying and spots. Homicide no-sells like a ton of Steen's offense, while Steen is he does this weird head bobbing sell of sides running knee in the corner. I thought that was pretty funny. He had a nice moonsault even then. There's lots of moves at the end with everyone in the ring. There's some good ideas. I thought others needed to be workshopped. So a little bit of a sloppy match for me, but again, Homicide takes the win. And Miccio, what did you think about this match live, and then compare it to now?
My memories of it live, I really don't have very many, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was kind of forgettable. Except for the end spot. I couldn't.
Yeah, the end spot, because I remember where we were sitting. We were sitting where we had a pretty clean shot of the cop killer being administered, if you will, and it looked sick when we saw it live. You're right. It didn't look as bad on the DVD as it did when it happened when we were there. But
funny to note, Dixie never wrestled for them again after that, so he probably did kill him in a weird way.
Is that actually true, Chris?
I'm pretty sure.
Well,
I'm pretty sure. I can look it up, but I'm fairly certain that this was one of Dixie's last match. If not the last, it was one of his final.
It was up close and personal. It was ugly. But whatever. Talking about the Ghetto Forks, I remember Ari and I used to have we'd always joke around about it. What's the difference between a Ghetto Fork and like an upscale neighborhood fork? They still have prongs and you still eat your dinner with them. But like I said, I didn't remember a whole lot of it from then. But going back and watching it, seeing Kevin Steen then and thinking about now and all the water that's gone under the bridge since that show, it's amazing. It really is amazing to think about the differences between the two of them. It's almost like two different guys, except you see a lot of, like we mentioned before, the foundations of what you'd come to know as the important figures of Ring of Honor. At the time, if I really give it some thought, I probably thought when I saw this match on the card that it was just going to be more or less a showcase of Homicide beating up three guys to kind of keep the ball rolling with Homicide as the deranged, psycho, on the edge character who was so badass you could put him in a match with, three other guys and he would just kick the living bejesus out of them. So that's basically kind of what you got. It was a little bit, everybody got a little showcase time during the match. Like Ari said, maybe some of the stuff should have been run through a little bit more before they actually went out and did it. But it was a decent, third match on a card. The multi-man match. Gabe said something about his changing style with his booking now to get away from the multi-man matches because he feels like you forget about them like 30 seconds after they're over. I think that this is one of those matches that kind of proves that's the point. That it almost feels like you're just trying to get a bunch more guys on the card, and just make it happen. But the thing about where Steen went from there, it's amazing. It's amazing that seeing in those first three matches, Claudio in the first match, Generico in the second match, Steen in the third match, and these are three guys who really did go on to become parts of the strong history of ROH in the coming years after that show. It's really cool to think that way, just think and see that.
Yeah, it is very, very interesting how they became, again, from the bottom of the card, and then even Generico and Steen would leave and then come back to the top, pretty much. And GST, when you, I guess you can comment on the match as well, but did you sort of see that happening at the time? You were following Ring of Honor, you saw guys in the bottom come back up to the top, work their way up.
Yeah, you could see it with Steen because if you look at when I was watching this match, and obviously, hindsight being 2020, you kind of see, okay, what were they focusing on? And if you look at it, there was a lot of offense between Homicide and Steen, and then Dixie and Azrael, they were just kind of there. They were just the guys to take the high impact moves. Yeah, they got a couple things in. And according to CageMatch.net, whatever, Dixie did not have a match in Ring of Honor after this. So, which is the only reason why I remember that was because you kind of saw this whole, okay, you had Lacey's Angels, which we'll be talking about pretty soon. And after that, you didn't really see any of the other guys, like Jay Lethal or Hydra, whatever he was called back then. You didn't really see him until a certain point. So, but for this match, I agree with Miccio. It was just kind of one of those showcases. You want to get guys over, and the crowd, you need something for them to do. And I think, given how the crowd reacted, they just wanted to see Homicide beat up a bunch of dudes, and that's what he did. And then, I'm not going to say I saw Kevin Steen being a future world champion, but clearly I think even then Gabe probably saw something like, okay, he's worth emphasizing in this match, or however it was laid out. I think Steen got a lot more offense in than Dixie or Azrael. So maybe that was them saying, yeah, we see something in you, just not right now.
All right, CM Punk in the sky blue polo and the best cocky smile in the world.
Don't forget the fact he was wearing Docker pants.
With Docker pants. Oh, what a sellout. Coming out to Cult of Personality to the ring, and he cuts a promo on James, by God, Gibson, and he puts over Gibson's technical ability and the fact that he was the MVP of 2005, but he also knocked him, saying he doesn't win in the clutch. And fans chant Sunday Night Heat at Punk. I just find that funny because that show no longer exists. It's on the scrap heap with so many other WWC shows like Velocity and Excess and Confidential, the Saturday Night's Main Event, Reboot, the ECW on Sci-Fi show, NXT Reality show.
Shotgun Saturday Night.
Shotgun Saturday Night. Shotgun was dead long ago.
I love that one. That was my favorite.
Me too. Those first 5 or 6 episodes were awesome. Anyway, Gibson comes out to rebut on the microphone, and Punk does a great heel move saying that if he comes out to fight him, it's your funeral. And as soon as Gibson charges him, he ducks out of the ring. And, essentially Gibson was able to grab onto the Ring of Honor title. Punk left it in the ring. And so now his attitude changes, and he desperately wants the belt back. The thing I've never liked about this segment, both live and watching it on tape and even now, is that the referee, I believe it was Keener, tries to take the belt away from Gibson. And why? I don't understand. If Ring of Honor was concerned that Punk would take the physical belt to WWE, there is now a guy, James Gibson, who actually had physical possession of it and would secure the title and make sure that Punk can do that. And so now the ref's trying to take the belt away from him to give it back to Punk. That part felt flat. I don't know if there was some sort of cross signals about all that, or I just did not like that part of it. But
stealing's bad, Ari. Stealing is bad.
I guess there's no honor in it, but at the same time, it got the job done, Miccio. I just don't get it. Punk attacks from behind.
You take this way too seriously, Ari.
I was gonna say you're taking like the most obscure little thing that
I'm
means
just
nothing
saying.
to anybody.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that if Gabe and everybody was so concerned that Punk is leaving with the title, I mean, right there, it's like just throw Punk out of the ring and kick him out. Now we've got the title back. Who cares if he's champion? It's like if Punk had left with the title in 2011 and then he dropped it in the it dropped it, I guess, in the crowd, and maybe somebody was able to return it to Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon said, no. CM Punk won the title. Let's give it back to him. It just wouldn't work for me. But anyway, CM Punk attacks from behind with a chain and lays James Gibson out. The refs come to separate the two, and now it's questionable whether or not James Gibson will, quote unquote, wrestle for or make it to the main event, which, when they always say that, the guy is going to make it. So quick thoughts, GST, on Punk's promo, this whole segment in a minute or less.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I thought it was really fun, and it got the point across, and it has James Gibson fighting from underneath. So what more do you need?
There you go, Miccio.
Sorry, exactly the same thing that Chris just said. It was, it was short, it was sweet, it got the point across. It got
on Punk.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was another opportunity for Punk to kind of get out there and rile the crowd to into a hot lather, if you will. Because that's always been one of his biggest strengths as a heel, is that he just knows how to press the buttons to get an audience so much vitriol and so much just bile from the crowd. It's like it's not everybody can do that, and he just has that natural ability to put that look on his face and change the body language and just say the things that no one wants to hear. And he did a great job with it. And putting down somebody like Gibson, who had been so on point that whole year. It was such an easy target. It was so good, and it was so sharp.
All right, we're going to move on to the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Title match, Ultimate Endurance. Carnage Crew were actually the tag team champions at this point, believe it or not. They defend against the Ring Crew Express of Don and Marcos, the Embassy of Fast Eddie Vegas and Excess, I believe was his name. And Lacey's Angel. Yes, that's right. Not Lacey's Angels, Lacey's Angel. That's how it was on the back of the box. Don't blame me. Ring of Honor spell check and grammar, even then, wasn't working as well as it should have been. So that team was Cheech and deranged. Essentially a 3-fall match. First fall scramble rules. A lot of flying around, some messy dive spots, although I thought the Ring Crew Express stage dives were fun. I think the fake outs, though, were mostly fuck ups and just very, very ugly. Could have been bad for a lot of people. Of note, Cheech was getting over with the crowd even then, and I think he would go on to have a modicum of popularity with Cloudy, especially in Chikara and especially upstate New York on the independent scene in there. Also, note, Excess has this cool idea, something I haven't even seen since, which is this sort of single leg crab tarantula in the ropes, and I've never seen it since then. And it's, to me, it's like a brilliant move that somebody should take out from the dust balls and start using again. But that leaves them open for Dunn and Marcos to the double team senton for the first elimination. Fall 2 is a street fight, so Obviously, the Carnage Crew get trash cans, and it goes hardcore. Low suplex is done, or Marcos or whatever, on a trash can outside, and basically there's a powerbomb neckbreaker by the Carnage Crew using the garbage can on top of the range for the pin, and that leads to fall 3, where the stipulation is the title is on the line. I guess that is a stipulation, but I mean, I don't know. I was expecting something else too, maybe like a tables match or something. Anyway, the closest chance for the ring crew is an assisted slice spread 2, but the Carnage Crew spike pile driver on Marcos, or done, or whoever, and that gets the 3 Carnage Crew retaining the titles. Miccio, I guess earlier you had mentioned you weren't a big fan of this one. It was, I believe in your words, an endurance to get through. Maybe you can explain why.
The match just didn't do it for me. You had 2 teams in the match who had fought on so many other shows at this point, being the Carnage Crew and the Ring Crew Express, that it was just, rehash to me. And then you bring in a makeshift embassy team, because XS really wasn't the guy who was supposed to be in the match. It was originally billed to be Mike Cruel, to be Fast Eddie's partner on that show. And then you put in Lacey's Angels, and they just never did anything for me. So you basically had 4 teams that did nothing for me. So
Lacey did something for you.
Well, Lacey did, unless you were like blind or not of the heterosexual persuasion, Lacey would do something for you. Now, if you had money, I'm sure she'd do a lot for you, but I didn't.
Wow.
But aside from that, it just wasn't very good in my estimation. It was a chance to kind of bang out a bunch of spots and do a bunch of crazy shit, and it really meant nothing in the grand scheme of anything. So to me, it was just like, And when I went back and watched it, it was because I remembered hating the match when we saw it live, and I went back and watched it again, and it was hard to watch the whole thing and not want to hit the fast forward button, and it hurt myself to do it. But I just kept watching, and it was just like, oh boy. The problem is if you do these like kind of 4-way tag team matches like the Ultimate Endurance concept, you really got to have 4 teams in it that are, well, have interest. You don't want to have 4 teams that are just like, eh. And it's amazing to me that the Carnage Crew were actually the tag team champions at this point, considering all the other different tag team combinations, that were around in ROH at the time. So, it is what it is. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
GST, thoughts on the match, and you don't have to leave it at that.
I don't even know how to respond to what Miccio was insinuating about Lacey, but if Austin Aries is listening to this, he lives somewhere in Brooklyn. That's all I know.
Character-wise, I was talking character-wise.
Sure. So
Lacey's actually done quite a bit of good work in China, from what I remember.
No one cares. So the Carnage Crew versus Dunn and Marcos.
Wait.
She's in China? What?
We could.
Yeah, she went to. She's in China doing something.
What is she doing in China?
She does. She's in education, I believe, right? Something like that.
Yeah, she was in some sort of program.
Yeah, I'm sure she does great stuff. But anyway,
GST, I can't believe this. Austin Aries. GST lives in Sacktown, right? So,
yes, Sacramento. Come at me, bro. Come at me.
Are they still together?
I don't think so, but I don't really care. So, anyway, the Carnage Crew and Dunn and Marcos in this match literally are Goldust and Stardust versus Rybaxel at this point. You've seen the match so many times. Just seeing them again here, for me, I literally was like, okay, I can go make lunch now and then come back to this match, right? Because it doesn't really matter. Because the stipulations are fine. All 8 guys, they're fine. I'm not gonna lie, I was not a big fan of the Carnage Crew. I mean, yeah, they have done a lot of hardcore stuff, but in terms of their ring work, So, and then the other guys, sure, a lot of botched up stuff. And hey, I've never been in the ring. I'm sure, they all trained very hard to do this. But this match, to me, I was just like, okay, whatever. I can live without it. And the Ultimate Endurance is kind of a cool idea, but I think unless you have the right talents to really have the kind of match that you need, particularly at the end, I mean, I don't know. You guys were there.
You have to have 4 teams that are on equal footing.
Right, or even if you only have the 2 teams at the end are going to be at equal footing, because even though it seemed everyone, I think, liked the Ring Crew Express, at the end, I mean, it kind of seemed like the crowd was like, okay, we get it. We know that they're not going to win. Move on. And then when they finally hit that pile driver from the second rope that they were doing at the time, this is the Carnage Crew, it was kind of like, oh, thank God it's over. So, I mean, the match was what it was. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ring Crew Express were like the lovable losers that you had, kind of thing. You know, the real jump, the big underdog kind of thing, and that was fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, they were the Mikey Whipwrecks of Ring of Honor. But at any point during that match, did you really think, even when it came down to those 2 teams, did you really think they were going to beat the Carnage Crew?
Hey, the Rockers won the tag titles from the Hart Foundation at one point. And,
yeah, in like one of the worst matches ever. What?
Yeah. Anyway,
whatever.
Our match before intermission, our featured match, is AJ Styles up against Roderick Strong, as AJ Styles was continuing his summer return to Ring of Honor in 2005, and it actually began, I believe, at Death Before Dishonor 3, and would continue for a couple more months as a feud with Jimmy Rave sort of kept him going there. Anyway, this was built up as a dream match, and 9 years later, hey, they would do it again in Ring of Honor when AJ Styles returned in 2014. So how about that? History repeats itself.
Yeah, there's also another painful piece of history in that repeating itself in those matches too.
Yes, the Styles Clash and Roderick Strong not landing properly on the Styles Clash, nearly killing himself. But look, before that, the match is filled with a lot of athleticism, a lot of awesome displays of their technical ability and their athletic ability. I thought AJ's backflip early in the match, that kind of, he stuck the landing into the Hurricane Rana, was insane. I think everyone just sort of did a double take with that. Roderick Strong avoiding a Styles Clash by grabbing the ropes while upside down was smart. There's all sorts of stuff. Styles picture perfect drop and plancha, the guardrail jump, and the springboard forearm that he does. Strong had all his backbreakers. He gets a sick kick for a close 2. Styles had a beautiful spiral tap, which missed. And Strong getting the stronghold with the knee to the back. Styles basically maneuvers his way into the Styles Clash for 3. Strong did not really take the move well. But as an overall match, I can't say enough about this one. It had me oohing and awing live and had me oohing and awing 9 years later. I'd watch this match again every day if I could. The fans were up for it. The wrestlers had a groove going on, and it resulted in a success that still holds up today. They got a standing ovation. I mean, honestly, could you ask for anything more out of these guys for this match? GST, go ahead, man.
I was going to say, that finishing sequence was, to me, I mean, you can kind of nitpick some of the other stuff in the match, but for me, this match was tremendous. I think it was probably, for me, the best match on the card. I mean, going from the half Nelson backbreaker into the Styles Clash. I mean, I personally would never think of it. Yeah, and when you see it there,
it's mind-blowing.
You're like, and to pull off as well as they did, right? I mean, because this was a pretty long match, right? I think
it was that it had to be about almost 20 minutes in at that point. It was seamless that it was sick.
Yeah, I mean, and they're they're tired and they're sweating, and to pull that off, you had to make sure you had it on. You know what I mean? So, geez, I thought that was great, and yeah, I thought this was the best match on the entire card.
I agree. I totally agree with you on that, man.
Seeing it live, and it's always a different perspective. So watching it back now, and then knowing that they had the match again, I personally really enjoyed it. There were parts of it that I thought the crowd wasn't getting as into as I thought they would, because back then in 2005, AJ Styles was the man. Roderick Strong was kind of coming up. So what did you guys think? Like, were there some parts of it that maybe the crowd was just like, okay, we know who Styles is. We know what we're going to get. Roderick Strong is on his way up. Was there kind of some anticipation that this match wouldn't have been that good?
I think the crowd got quiet during the match because everybody was just so kind of taken aback by how good it was. I remember sitting there and watching and looking at other people's faces, and people were just so intense and watching the action in the ring in a way that I hadn't recalled in a long time, that people were really just invested in. It wasn't like a typical match where you'd have, babyface and heel and chant back and forth. This was a match that people who really loved wrestling would just want to watch and allow unfold in front of them. And I remember that's how I felt when I was watching. I was just so like transfixed on the quality of the work that both of these guys were doing, that the thought of just trying to to get involved in any other way except watching would have been, in my opinion, it would have been almost unfair to the guys, because they were doing such an amazing job in the match.
Yeah, I think when people may forget that, in the early years of Ring of Honor, if a crowd was quiet, it didn't necessarily mean that they didn't like the match, but it was respect, and they were more of a Japanese crowd where they would get really hot for big moments, but then otherwise we're just sort of would be intent on watching it. But I mean, I think there were a lot of people who were impressed by all the athleticism in the match. I think people were shocked at some of the things that were going on, and that's a good thing. Miccio, did you have anything else to add on the match, or?
It's like I probably haven't thought about this match maybe since 2005, 2006. So when I went back and watched it, I thought to myself, like, wow, that match was good.
Yeah.
And
certainly an underlooked overlooked classic, I guess, would be a.
If you had, I don't know how keen you guys are into doing it, but if you had to put a star rating on that match, that couldn't be anything lower than 4.
I'd give it 4. Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah. I could see that.
And like you mentioned before, but like both of you guys have mentioned before, this was really Roderick Strong on the way up, and it kind of being who he is today, with Mr. ROH and being in the dynasty. This is when you really started to pay attention to Strong as probably as a tag team specialist, really, when you get down to it, because he had been pretty much just teaming with the Gen Next stuff and being with Jack. It's mostly associated with Jack Evans, because you've kind of felt that it was Shelley and Aries were the two singles guys, and then you had Evans and Strong as the team. So to see him in a match, like a high profile match like this with a guy like Styles, who at the time, like you said a minute ago, Chris, was like the man in 2005. It was really cool to see him kind of get this bump up. He had also had the match in New York City against Punk.
Right, and that galvanized a lot of people.
At the Supper Club show, and that match was great.
Yeah, I think a lot of people didn't, kind of give him a lot at the beginning, like a lot of oh, he's not going to be able to beat Punk. This is not going to happen. And then by the end of it, you had people expecting Strong to win in that match, and he didn't.
There were, some of those near falls. You were kind of like, you really could see the fans.
Like, whoa, this could happen.
That could happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, I would hope this is on some sort of the compilation, either a Styles comp or Strong comp or just a best of ROH comp, because this is definitely a match that doesn't deserve to be lost in the history of Ring of Honor. Yeah. So I would recommend watching it. If
they really want to kind of showcase like that era of ROH, I think this is a match that you really want to kind of share with people as a good showcase for what was going on at that time.
For sure, and just to get to your point, Miccio, that Strong would go on. He would win Survival of the Fittest that year. He was featured in the Jade Chung storyline. So yeah, this was definitely sort of like the way to Aries and Shelley had been elevated, and now this was the way to get Strong to that point too. So we move on to Gary Michael Capetta at intermission time. Again, he's selling that Gibson won't be able to wrestle tonight. Again, that means the opposite. Gary Michael Capetta is with Lacey, and she chews out her crew for losing too much. If they don't start winning, she will think about making changes in personnel. And that actually did happen. We move on to the Ring of Honor Pure Title match. Samoa Joe is the champion at this point, having won it from Jay Lethal at Manhattan Mayhem 1 back in May of 2005. He's defending against Jimmy Rave with Prince Nana and the aforementioned Jay Chung. I was really impressed with a huge heat for Jimmy Rave that's still there for him through the association with the Embassy, even though Punk had just recently won his big feud over him just a month or so, or 2 months or so before. Prince Nana and Jimmy Rave, I thought, were great together as a package, and Samoa Joe was super over as expected. Gabe is on comment. Or sorry, Jimmy Bauer is on commentary to explain the pure rules, which absolutely needed to be explained. If you don't remember it, it's no close hands to the fists. With the fists, you could have open hand slaps. You got docked a
Get out your
warning.
stupid rule. It's time for the rules.
Oh my God, dude! I'm trying to do this without any notes too, because I did not take notes on this. But you got 3 rope breaks. If you had 3 rope breaks, you were out of them. You couldn't use them to break up submissions and stuff like that. And if you had a warrant twice or something, you lost a rope break. I don't know. Whatever. The match itself was pretty good. And again,
wait a minute! Don't forget 20 counts on the floor.
Yes,
20 counts on the floor.
mandatory 20 counts.
Mandatory 20 count, which, listen, I don't mind 20 counts. I think PWG does a good job with that, with the 20 count, and I think there should be 20 counts on the floor.
I like the 20 count better myself, too.
Yeah. Whenever I wrestle or play my WWE video games, I always put it on 20 counts, because if you do 10, you're going to be rolling on the floor too much.
That's just because you're an indie snob, Ari.
Yes, I don't deny that. Listen, anyway, there's a cool centrifugal force spot that opens the match. Joe uses some open hand slaps, and again, this is a showcase what you have to do to, what you cannot do in this specialty match and how to work it. Nana gives some good distraction that leads to the heat. Rave uses a shoelace and a straight out vintage heel move to choke out Joe. And again, something funny is Jimmy Bauer's discussed about what's happening with Nana pushing around Jay Chung. And obviously, I think that's funny because we all know he was the one that booked this whole thing to begin with. Anyway, Rave tricks Joe into losing his rope breaks. Joe comes back and he's angry. He gets the muscle buster dead set in the middle of the ring for the 3 count, and Joe retains. Miccio, I know you're never at a loss for your thoughts on the Pure Titles match or your Pure Rules match, so give me your overall thoughts on that and the individual players for this one.
Okay. I've never been as you've kind of intimated. I've never been a huge fan of the Pure Title Rules matches. I understood what they were trying to do, trying to differentiate their secondary title from their main one, so that it wouldn't just be another wrestling title. Like now, you look at it, you have the heavyweight title and you have the TV title in ROH, and the rules are the same. It's like the Pure just gave it a different flavor and a different feel, and that's fine, and that's great, whatever. I always felt like it kind of screwed up the flow of matches. But that's just my opinion. I mean, if you think I'm wrong, that's cool. I don't care. Everybody has the right to feel their way about it. I thought sometimes you got some really good matches from the Pure Title match scene. But at the same time, I just felt it was kind of unnecessarily complicated to do this. If you're bringing in new people, you to a pro wrestling type promotion, and you're gonna have to. I remember you had to basically sit there and have the rules explained to you. I remember going to shows with you, Ari, and your friend John, who used to drive with us to shows or go with us to shows, and I remember listening to you explain the rules in great detail, and it's like it should never be that complicated. When you think about the great stipulation type matches that you see in pro wrestling, the rules are never all that complicated. You try to keep it simple, try to keep it, manageable in the sense that people are going to be able to follow it, whether they're fully invested in the match like we were, or they're just a casual watcher of the show with friends or whatever it might be. But the other thing that I just want to say is you mentioned the Jimmy Rave heat. Jimmy Rave was a fucking heat magnet at this point, and more so than maybe anybody else in the promotion at that time.
Yeah, come a long way.
When he came out, the crowd was just vicious. I mean, and unrelentingly vicious, and with the toilet paper throwing and all the different, the die Jimmy die chants. It's like you didn't see that for other guys, and you
don't today. Not even for Matt Hardy.
I mean, yeah, and it's like Nana's act has always been so entertaining. I've loved his act from day one, and I always enjoyed that character. I remember we were at the show at the what's it called, the New Yorker, and Jade Chung was pushed against the apron where we were, and I was offering her to buy her out of her servitude, and I thought that I did brought up a good memory of that. That I told her I had a good job and I already owned a house and I could take care of her better than Prince Nana could. I wasn't seeing anyone at the time, I don't think. But you know, it just worked out really well. And you know, to see Samoa Joe do his thing, even now, I mean, Ari, you and I went to the TNA taping in New York last week, and we got to see Joe live again. Joe is just he really is he's just a great performer. And he brings a sense of realism to the ring that you don't get, or a sense of intensity that you don't get maybe from a lot of other guys.
Yeah.
And
once the champ is here, turned on. I mean, it's just sort of like you were pumped up to another level. Yeah. And
you know, it's like I'll always be a huge fan of Joe, no matter what promotion he works for. I was watching it. I actually made Kelly watch a little bit the other night, because she wanted to see if she'd see us on camera. And I was like, the only reason to watch TNA, in my estimation, is Samoa Joe. But that's just me, because he's my guy. You know, it's like, you brought me into ROH right around the time that Joe won the title. And, you know, he was the champ when I got in. And he basically was the champ for the first 2 years that I was in. And he'll always be, you know, Samoa Joe is always going to be like, when I look at it, you say to me, you're one image of an ROH champion, it's going to be Samoa Joe in my head. He's my guy. I'm a mark for him. I have no problem admitting that. I have a Samoa Joe action figure. Listen, he's awesome.
I no disagreement from me there, for sure. And I think Joe, it's a wonder that to this day Joe is able to get that reaction from fans, the fans of the TNA tapings. I mean, you just perk up when Joe comes in, because he's going to.
There's an air of
there's something about
air of intensity that's around him, and it's like, if you know, not maybe it's because I am a mark for Joe, but if I was running TNA as a promotion, I'm sorry, we talked about this the other night, you and I, when we were coming home from the show. TNA's biggest issue is that they lack guys with like major league charisma, and Samoa Joe, it has charisma in excess. Yes. And it's not that standard pro wrestling charisma where it's like he's got this giant personality, and you know, Joe's power is all in the subtlety of the act. That Joe's strength comes from being the biggest badass in the room, and he doesn't not
the angry, bitter Joe that TNA has.
He doesn't have to say it
him in years past.
He doesn't have to say it. He doesn't have to do anything. He would look at a guy in the ring. And you can go back and watch some ROH shows and you'll see it. He'll just make an eye gesture towards somebody. And it's like, oh, fuck, this guy's in trouble now.
Yep.
And it's like, you don't have that too much with guys in the business these days. You don't have – can you think of another badass like him in pro wrestling today?
Gosh. That's a good question. I don't know. It's hard for me to think of someone who has that sort of like, you look at him and you know shit's going to go down. I think Roman Reigns, when he was with the Shield as a 3-man group, definitely had something of that. And I don't know if he has that as a singles for sure at this point.
Joe's just a very unique guy. And I think, you know, ironically enough, a guy like Jimmy Rave, who I don't know that I thought really highly of him at the time, but to go back and watch him work this match with Joe, it showed that Jimmy Rave could hang in there in matches with a guy at Joe's level and put on a good show. It was a better match than I remembered it being.
You know what? I think Kevin Steen had that also. I think in the latter day Ring of Honor.
Steen would talk a lot of shit.
Right.
And it's like he would yell and scream. Like he would yell and scream in the promo, whereas Samoa Joe, like the promo at the beginning of this show, Samoa Joe never raised his voice.
Yeah.
There's just an element of intensity and like a grave sense of intensity there that I don't think many other guys can generate.
GST, any suggestions from you?
Most of the names that come to my mind would probably be in Japan.
Okay.
So I mean, you're thinking of like Goto or Shibata.
Right.
And they can just glance over. They don't have to talk. You just know they're going to beat you up. And it doesn't even matter what their size is, because I would argue that guys like Loki had that too. And I would say in Ring of Honor, Daniel Bryan had it, but in WWE he clearly does not. You don't just look at him. Yeah, you don't look at him and he could glance over across the ring at someone and you don't instantly think, oh, he's going to beat him up. But in Ring of Honor, if Daniel Bryan, he did that little turn with his head and smiled, you knew that man, a submission hold was coming and it was going to look painful.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in terms of this match, I don't know. I guess maybe it was just Ring of Honor thinking, kind of anticipating that their fan base put a little bit more effort into understanding. Because to me, it was always just like, the pure rules weren't that hard to understand. You had 3 rope breaks, and after that, you didn't have any, no punches, and a 20 count on the floor. That's pretty much it.
When you put it like that.
What? I don't know. I guess maybe like maybe it was that, and then you had to think about the code of honor. Okay, so they shake hands. Technically, there wasn't supposed to be interference, but we always knew there were. The referees weren't supposed to be touched, but that always happened. So maybe it just kind of felt like, okay, there are all these rules. This is kind of complicated. But if you just kind of...
they just felt kind of unnecessary in my estimation.
I always liked the pure rules because I thought it was different, because you didn't have... It's kind of like the hardcore title even before WWE had one. The sense of... Okay, maybe this is even a weird analogy, but I'm going with it anyway. The ECW world title. You knew that was different from other world titles because the matches, you could have the violence and the referees would be really lax. Even if there were quote-unquote rules in ECW, you knew in the world title match, those didn't really apply. And you were going to see something hard-hitting and possibly a lot of blood. Whereas you knew in WCW and WWE, in a typical world title match, even though we did sometimes get some laxed rules, it could end in a DQ. It could end in a count out. But you knew in an ECW title match that wouldn't happen. And I think for the pure title, for me, that was always kind of the anticipation, is that, okay, they are limiting themselves. How are they going to make this fun and creative in the match? And that for me was, the heel using his 3 rope breaks, but sometimes hiding it from the refs that the ref didn't know that he used all 3 already, or just different things about it. And I thought the psychology of the pure titles match was better. But I do agree that to the point that when Joe and then Nigel held it, it was kind of getting, okay, this used to be different and cool, but you haven't really done anything that much different with it. And when it was finally unified with the world title, I thought that was a good time for it to just...
Yeah, it was the right time. It was appropriate.
So, but for the time that some, guys like when Nigel had it, I thought it was great. Or guys like John Walters, I think that was his name. Yeah. Guys like that, I thought it gave something different for them, because you knew that there were aspects of themselves that they didn't have or could have in other wrestling matches. So this gave them something different to work with. So
I was always a proponent of Delirious taking the pure title from Nigel, and the gag would be that he would have no idea what the rules were. So, he would use like 3 rope breaks in his first 30 seconds, and, or he would he would just do whatever he wanted, and that would be fun for a little bit. You could sort of transition into somebody else who did know how to use it. But I thought that
somehow he always won, even though he knew, right?
Right. Yeah. Even though he didn't know the rules sometimes, somehow he always won. And, it was, I thought there was something there, but, then unified it. It was fine. No big deal. Let's get back to
the match was good though. I enjoyed it. I'm not saying it wasn't great, but it was for a pure titles rules match. It was good. And I think the crowd enjoyed it a little bit, probably a lot more than the tag team endurance match. So
I just thought the heat kind of died at the end.
Yeah, it did.
But I think, generally the guys, they got into the guys. Prince Nana was in on the stick after the match. He blames Jade for the loss and bullies her around. And I don't know if you guys spotted this, but he refers to her at one point as Jackie Chan.
Yeah, he says it real quickly, and you're kind of like,
where'd that come from?
Well, Jade Chung, Jackie Chan,
I know.
JC, whatever.
Anyway, Nana does get a lot of heat for all this. He forces her to be Rave's footstool to the outside. She says she's going to trip and fall, and and basically Rave does trip and fall because she can't support the weight. Nana's about to slap her when the lights are out, and it's Sabu. No, it's Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy Yay!
How much better would it have been if it was Sabu? Come on.
No. Well, in
Uh,
2005, maybe at that point.
Maybe not.
Rave and Nana escape to the floor, and essentially they're cheered like crazy. Matt Hardy is cheered like crazy by the Ring of Honor fans for his appearance. So how about that? What a difference between then and now, you know? Jay leaves, and Matt grabs the microphone. He proceeds to rank on Johnny Ace. He calls Vince McMahon and the rest of the WWE a-holes, and they suggest they pop in a few ROH DVDs if they want to see good wrestling. See, he was a supporter even then, GST. He really did like the product.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I have no issue with Hardy being a Ring of Honor, but the two different situations are different though. The second time around, because Ring of Honor fans, for whatever reason, there's still kind of this sense of kind of being a little snobby in the sense that they didn't like Jeff Hardy coming in because it was a cash grab or because of what, he didn't respect wrestling anymore and he was on whatever he was on at the time, whatever. This time, Matt Hardy was the victim of WWE, and we all knew that Matt could have quote-unquote better matches than he was having, even though, I mean, come on, in WWE he had a good run. So, but still, I think the fans embraced him this time, and then they didn't do it this current time just because it kind of felt more like, oh, he's just here to make money, whereas before he got screwed. So whatever.
But he's not here to talk about a WWE GST. He's not here to talk about that whore Amy Dumas. He came here to wrestle. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, don't you think, fellas?
Hey, when someone cheats on you and you're angry, you're gonna say a lot of hateful things. So, I still wonder if he still doesn't like mustard, though. I still have that burning question.
Or grapes.
Does he still love grapes?
Anyway, this is his first real match in about a year. He's excited to wrestle Daniels, and Daniels comes out with his extended disposable teen entrance with Allison Danger, and this is also one of his first Ring of Honor matches of his return. Something I found interesting, no streamers, because in this era, 2014, in Ring of Honor, everything gets streamers. But
everything gets streamers nowadays.
Everything, but not here. Daniels welcomes Hardy to Ring of Honor with a duck under and leg lariat.
They did streamers when Punk left, guys. We all knew what streamers were.
I
think Matt Hardy and Daniels was a good match, but maybe just not quite streamer.
Gee, now who's taking things too seriously?
Wait a minute. Had we really, and Chris too, have we really seen the streamers in an ROH match at this point?
Except for, wait, no, they weren't there for when All Japan was there. No, they weren't there for the New Japan guys.
No.
I think maybe the Joe Kobashi stuff was one.
But that was after. No, that was after Punk. That was after the Punk farewell match.
Couple months, yeah.
Ring of Honor fans, you guys didn't know that streamers existed?
We're missing this.
They knew toilet paper existed to throw at Jimmy Rave, though.
There you go.
I'm sure. All right, the in-ring match was pretty good. These guys are, they're professionals, man. Daniels has a lot of experience at the time. Matt Hardy, obviously, a lot of experience at the time. They work a pretty simple technical match with some, high-flying moves sprinkled in between. Daniels gets the Arabian moonsault press to the outside. His springboard elbow misses, and Hardy gets some combos in, including the side effect. He gets the splash mountain bomb, which didn't really expect from him at the time. That gets two. There's a spot in the middle of the match or towards the end where Hardy just hits like 3 or 4 superplexes in a row, like to work.
I think he hits all 4 corners. I think he went to all 4 corners. Yeah.
It reminds me of when Hardy went for 5 side effects in the match against Cole, and that makes me think that Hardy thinks that the key to Ring of Honor style is to do the same impact move over and over and over again. But I don't know about that.
And then only get the kick out at 2, which, hey, let's be honest, that is indie style.
Well, look, this superplex was no Tully Blanchard superplex, or no, it was Barry Windham who did.
It wasn't even a top rope superplex, man. He only just standing on the second rope.
Right, that's true.
But
anyway.
when the other guy is on the third rope, it still counts as a superplex.
Yeah, it does. The other one, I guess, is a top rope suplex.
It's like a super plex. I don't know.
It's a super duper plex.
Anyway, Hardy's moonsault is missed, and Daniel's best moonsault ever does hit for a near fall. Cabrera gets the knees. Hardy gets a roll up for a close 2. Daniels gets a DVD for a double down. And this is where we see CM Punk make a presence again. He's outside. He grabs Allison Danger, and he punches her in the face. Wow. I mean, at least it's not putting her through a table, guys, right?
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. Hardy goes for a twist of fate. It's reversed. He gets tangled up the ref. That lets Punk blast Daniels with the chain. Hardy gets a twist of fate, but Hardy is not able to get the pin for that. Gets a kick out by Daniels, and that gets a great reaction from the fans. Punk outside is in disbelief. A second twist of fate, Hardy can't cover because he doesn't have the energy. So he gets this quote, "The new submission hold he told me about," says Jimmy Bauer. And I always love when announcers sell a new move like that. He told me about it in the back. It's called the so-and-so. This is the butterfly hold that he later called the ice pick in other promotions. And the ref stops the match since Daniels was KO'd and he can't respond. A little bit of a mixed reaction in the finish. Obviously, the crowd was split. They would cheer for Hardy. They would cheer for Daniels. But I think overall this match went over really well. And the refs come out to tend to Allison Danger. GST, thoughts on Matt Hardy's debut in Ring of Honor back in 2005?
I thought this match was good. In the end, made sense because you kind of knew, okay, this protects Daniels from the loss, but Matt Hardy's going to get the win. And I guess he wanted to exceed expectations because who would have thought Matt Hardy gets a submission win? I mean, no one thinks that. So, but overall, I thought the match was good. And then obviously you get Punk Daniels somewhere down the road. So I think a win in all columns, and Matt Hardy, like I said, you knew him coming into Ring of Honor. You knew what he brought to the table in WWE, and you just kind of wondered, could it work in Ring of Honor, quote unquote, style of wrestling? And it did. So, because I didn't see the crowd go, "Oh God, this is a WWE style match." I think everyone kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think people didn't have that kind of worry or connotation there. I mean, I wouldn't say that he was all the way up to the potential of an ROH style, but I don't think he had to. It was his first match.
No,
and he did a
it
lot,
wasn't like
and,
up there, but I mean, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't so bad they were like, "Oh, get this out of the ring."
Right. It wasn't.
He's always been a good
At
wrestler.
that point, you got to remember, at that point, there was a huge divide between what you'd see in an ROH ring and what you'd see in a WWE ring, and Matt Hardy did more than hold up his end of the bargain in a match with a real ROH icon.
I just really enjoyed the "fuck Johnny Ace" chants. I thought
not only an
that was
ROH
hilarious.
icon, but I think the key to
An
this
indie
match,
icon.
Oh yeah, well no, the key to this match is that this was at this point, even with Hardy signing the contract, it was a WWE guy up against a TNA guy, essentially a guy who was from TNA who's now working in Ring of Honor at the same time, in Ring of Honor. So to me, it reminded me a lot of that Tommy Dreamer match with Mike Awesome.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew you were going to go
Awesome.
there. Yeah, it was an ECW guy or WWE guy contracted to a WCW contracted guy in ECW ring.
Yeah, it's so unique and so interesting what happens out as a result of that. So, obviously Hardy won twice in his 3 matches, but he put over Roderick Strong later in August, and it was going to be interesting to see what happened. All right, Miccio, what about you?
I thought it was a really good match, and you know what? I really thought it came off better watching it now than I remember it being then. But I remember it just being, it was more of the spectacle that brought us to see that that show, and it paid off. It was a good match. When you go back and you look at it, there wasn't a whole lot of spectacular ROH style spots that you came to expect from that era, but both guys wrestled their asses off. And it's kind of cool that Matt Hardy had said at the beginning when he cut his promo that he brought his working boots with him that night, and he really did. He worked his ass off, and especially for a guy who really hadn't been, in the ring for quite a long time, it was a good show. It was a good showing on his behalf, and I mean, you couldn't have asked maybe for a better talent to put him in the ring with. I mean, Christopher Daniels, as we all know, just being 9 years later, he's like the ultimate professional. I don't remember seeing him in a bad match maybe ever. So to kind of put him in a match with a guy who was they were trying to help transition to the ROH style or the indie style, you couldn't have asked for a better dance partner than Daniels. And
What
they
about the
both
match
put
with
on
Val Venus in TNA?
Oh, well, come on. Or when he landed on his head on WC Nitro on the Nitro show.
Yeah.
But other than those two, really though, on the indie scene, can you really think of any bad matches that you've seen Chris Daniels do?
I mean, he's been in some boring matches, but I don't think bad is.
See, I didn't use the word. Everybody has a boring match here or there where you just really don't gel with somebody, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. The quality of this match was outstanding, And I remember at the time, it was, you kind of said to yourself, it's like, wow, somebody like Matt Hardy really might be able to fit with these guys. And it was a good show. It was a good showing on both guys' behalfs. And like GST said, it gave Hardy the win. It protected, Daniels to put him back into another match with Punk down the line. It did everything it needed to do. And it was a really good match. It was a nice, solid match.
CM Punk on the microphone talks up Matt Hardy, and he's ecstatic about Christopher Daniels being taken out of title contention with that loss. And he says that was the main event. He thanks the crowd. Gibson will not compete, so Punk is leaving, and he's leaving ROH with the belt. However, A Country Boy Can't Survive plays, and Gibson, with sort of like this Terry Funkish head wrap around his entire head, is out, and the refs try to stop him, but forget that. Punk meets him in the entranceway. The brawl is on. The bell rings. We've got the title match of CM Punk defending against James Gibson after all. And this was a really good match of sort of a technical, a lot of technical work with a definitely more paced match with Punk taking his time in the middle and maintaining attacks on the head while mocking Gibson and playing heel. And Gibson did some early work on the arm. And, essentially what happened out of that was Punk had pulled the turnbuckle pad, which was, back in the old school days of Ring of Honor, the one that covers the entire three pads with just one pad and not the actual three.
It's Japanese style.
Yeah, Japanese style. It connects all three posts. But Punk took it off, and ironically, it's Punk who goes shoulder first into the exposed post. And that gives you sort of the psychology of the match with Gibson working the arm and, Punk working Gibson's cut and the head work. And that just is followed up on the rest of the way. There's a lot of reversals. Something of note is that Punk's back was sliced up from the guardrail, like a barricade shot at one point, and I totally had forgotten about this.
I had forgotten that too. It was nasty.
So nasty. Not quite hardcore Holly versus Rob Van Dam from that one ECW on Sci-Fi match, but still not pretty at all, man.
You know what? I think this one was more of a puncture than it was like a gash. Yeah. Because there was a couple of times where you actually got the shot of his back. And I couldn't find the gash, but I think it was probably more of a puncture than it was a gash.
Yeah, still not. I can't imagine.
It was nasty.
It wasn't to work with, and yeah, God, the Punk, and again, you get the heat, the length of the time of the match. There's a lot of things that these guys had to work through that give them credit for doing it. It's the story again. It's Gibson has to beat Punk, but Punk can work for the draw. So there's a little bit of a longer match, but actually didn't seem all too long at the end of it. I think the finish was a little bit the way it sped up and it kind of happened out of nowhere made it seem like it was sort of this out of nowhere experience. They also did some apron move teases with the suplex and the Tiger Driver tease, and Gibson turns into a DDT. So Ring of Honor was doing it before it was cool to do it in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. How about that? I'm teasing you guys out there, the PWG fans. Don't worry. Basically, another thing to point out, Punk has a prototype version of the Anaconda Vice, which he had started to work on. It was a new movie he was beginning to use and something he'd use more in OVW and obviously in WWE when he'd started out there. Essentially, our finish is getting the Anaconda Vice and Gibson working back to his feet, getting a guillotine on. Punk ducks out of it, gets the bridging roll-up using the ropes to steal the win, and Punk just rolls to the outside, has this amazing cat ate the canary smile. And Gabe has beset himself that Punk is leaving with the Ring of Honor World title. Gabe signs off in the future.
Gabe, it's Chris Bauer.
I'm sorry, Bauer. It's really Gabe. Who are we kidding, guys? Who are we kidding? Jimmy Bauer signs off in the future of Ring of Honor is in jeopardy. I love the finishing sequence. I thought it told a great story of James Gibson's valiant work and Punk doing everything to sneak out the win, which he eventually did. So Miccio, you live in the building. It was late. There was a lot of action before then. What did you think live as the match happened, and how does it compare to your thoughts now?
Okay. First thought. By that point of the night, I think we had all sweated so much that we didn't have anything left. I think dust was starting to come off of us.
Yeah, it was tough.
But as far as the matches, I loved the match live, and I loved watching it again on DVD. It was Punk at his heelish best, and at the same time, it was James Gibson. Chris, you mentioned Gibson fighting from underneath. It was James Gibson in his best role, fighting from underneath. That, it's like he was always that. It was like the little engine that he would just keep doing and keep going and keep going. And they built him with that. What was it at the Best of the Super Juniors that year, where it was like the towel was thrown in for him, he wouldn't submit, but he wouldn't give up, and it just it really cemented the whole character that they were going with, with Gibson, and Gibson really did become like the perfect guy to be the foil for Punk in this era. I would have loved to have seen it go on even longer, to see, like, not this match, but the feud between those two. If Punk hadn't signed and, or didn't have to leave as soon as he did, I think you could have had this feud go on for a much longer period of time, and it would have been one of the most epic feuds in ROH, because you couldn't find two guys who were more different in every way, shape, or form than Gibson and Punk, and it made for in-the-ring dynamite. And the way it ended was beautiful, with Punk cheating. James Gibson was the one guy you knew would not stoop to those levels to do anything that was untoward in a match, that he was about winning matches the right way. And to see Punk steal the match that way, and then like you said, to see him on the camera after with that cat who swallowed the canary look on his face, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Now, the match, was it a perfect match in that sense? No. Was it really good? Yeah, 3.5, 4 stars, maybe on the low 4, 3 3/4. But it did what it needed to do, and the transitions were great. It was a really entertaining match. I wish it hadn't been so hot in the building that night, that I could have enjoyed it more live. But going back and seeing it, it kind of rekindled the flavor of what was going on at the time in a way that I hadn't thought about in a while. And it really was a solid match and a great performance by both of the guys in the ring.
GC, I don't know what you feel about, or how you feel about the underdog matches up against, the guy who's, got a decided advantage. But to me, this is a perfect exemplification of that. But how did it work for you?
Oh, this match worked out great, especially if you watch it against, I don't remember the name of the show, but basically when Gibson wins the title in the 4-way. And
Redemption was the name of the show, Chris.
Okay, Redemption. There you go. So because this match, so you have this whole match where, like you guys said, it went kind of long, and you kind of figured Punk is either trying to go and get the time limit draw, because as champion he has that as his tool, because really it's Gibson that has to beat him. He doesn't really have to do anything. He just has to survive. So you see this entire match, and I thought it was a great match. All the wrestling in it. Particularly, obviously Gibson had been in there for a while, and I was really impressed with the way he worked with the Ring of Honor style. But this, I thought, just kind of put him on that next level, because I personally didn't see it. I always kind of thought, okay, Gabe built to this well, but I don't know if Ring of Honor fans are really going to see Gibson as an actual champion. And then when you see this match, you're like, oh, okay, the fans do see him that way. Or at least the fans, they're live in the crowd, and probably on the DVD, they probably will too. Rewatching it and then remembering Redemption, that it just kind of works in, because even in that match, you had Punk trying to stay away from Joe and Daniels, and then he also in that match he was ready to fight Gibson the entire time, because he already knew that he had beaten him once, and then to have Gibson beat him there, knowing that he had the loss here, I think the psychology worked between the two matches. So I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed looking back on it. And yeah, I think the kind of the end of the match when Bauer, Gabe, whatever, it's like, Ring of Honor, we're really in trouble, guys. It's kind of like, okay, that's kind of funny and awesome at the same time, because it works in that weird gray area that us as wrestling fans, come on, we all know that it's staged, but when you can bring a certain sense of reality to it, and if you're into the storyline, you are kind of afraid, in the sense that you love, as Ring of Honor fans, we love the promotion, and we don't want to see the title taken away. So I think it worked out.
You ask, what next? What now? Who's left? And you would get a little bit of an answer in the immediate future, because the post-match, Punk is celebrating, and Daniels comes out, and both he and Punk brawl.
Daniels had to be a killjoy, huh?
Well, the fans wanted somebody to stop Punk, and they asked to ring the bell. Well, the majority of them were saying ring the bell.
I never wavered in my support of CM Punk.
All right. Instead of the match starting, Daniels is able to get the belt and smashes Punk with the belt. And he takes it with him back to the curtain area. Before that, not before he humorously runs down all the WWE shows from A to Z list that Punk will appear on. But before that, he has to stick around to reclaim the ROH title. If he wants it, you have to fight for it. And that would happen the next week in Philadelphia, which would be ROH Homecoming 2005, the first ROH show with that name. A couple post-show interviews, one with Nigel McGuinness. Colt Cabana is told they're telling Nigel that Colt Cabana has gone to England to work on his European style and to challenge him in the future. Nigel is perfectly okay with that. He's ready for Colt when he comes back. One more promo from Daniels and Allison Danger in the background. 16 months he waited and bid his time. He talks about the Punk Raven feud, but why did Punk choose to target Daniels? Daniels thinks it's jealousy that CM Punk wanted to be Daniels, and he talks about when Punk dressed up as Daniels to mock him, something Punk would actually later repeat in a way with Jeff Hardy in WWE, which, again, it's great. All these things that Punk did right on the independent scene, he brought back later, and it worked in a larger audience. Daniels says that he's taken matters into his own hands, that if Punk wants the belt, he has to wrestle him. I'll send you packing and give you the proper goodbye you deserve once and for all. And Allison Danger is very pleased with it all. So there you go, guys. That is the show. What thoughts, Miccio?
Listen, going back and watching it, this show definitely had a couple of really, really good matches on it. The standout for me it has to be the AJ Styles Roderick Strong match. But everything was good. It was good and solid. There was just that Ultimate Endurance match that I couldn't ultimately endure.
Very good way of saying it. GST, overall thoughts on the show, best match, any other favorites that you had?
Pretty much the same thing. I mean, take out that Ultimate Endurance, and this show is pretty great. I mean, you have the four-way, but what else did you expect? For obviously, like I said, I think Styles Roderick Strong was the best match on the card. The second best probably being the title match. Aries versus Generico, great match for the time that it was given. And the pure title was awesome. And then Hardy Daniels, hey, that was a great match too. So I would definitely recommend it. If you can find it on eBay, maybe not worth more than $20, but if you can get it, I'd say pick it up.
Yeah, this is definitely a DVD from eBay that's worth the original price of it.
This is why we need a Ring of Honor network, goddamn. Because it's so sad to be able to. We're reviewing these shows, and there's really no way for people to go check them out unless they have to.
Well, there's the Summer of Punk DVD, so you can get the Summer of Punk stuff there.
Yeah,
but a lot of the other stuff,
show.
Yeah, you can't get the whole show and the whole experience all together. So what are you gonna do? So look, guys, we made it. We made it through another edition of the ROH Retrocast. So that means it's time to pay the bills, and we'll start with Chris Miccio. What do you have to plug?
I don't have any. All my bills are already paid. Come on, man. I'm good. I'm better like that. What do I have to plug? Let's see. We have the We Love Pro Wrestling group on Facebook. We're getting close to, or we just surpassed, 50,000, or getting close to 50,000 members at this point. So if you haven't joined yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Come on in. There's the this Friday night we have the ROH show at MCU Park that Ari and I are going to both be at. We'll both be sitting in section 2 if you want to slap us or shake our hands. We'll both be available for either one of those. Ari likes the slapping, I like the shaking a little bit better, but that's just personal priorities. If you're interested, I occasionally hit up the Twitter machine. I don't remember what my handle is at this point. It's at TZ Missions and the number 7. So if you want to follow any kind of my random thoughts that I have, please follow me there. And otherwise, listen, whenever Ari and Chris need me around, I'm here. I'm like the designated hitter of Pro Wrestling Ponderings podcasts.
The all-purpose utility outfield.
Yeah, I'm like the guy who you just can't necessarily find one set position for, but he's always ready to play.
That's right. Well, we appreciate it. And obviously, if you want to check out a little column of honor on pwponderings.com, then you can do so. And, I'm writing about Ring of Honor and other stuff that is on my mind. And, let's post it at least once a week, sometimes twice per week. I started out coming back twice per week, but now it's more like once a week, twice if I'm in the mood. But, still putting it out there. You guys can check it out. And then on the Twitter at Column of Honor. You can type in Column of Honor in the search bar and it'll come on up. It's at Ari Berenstein, ARIBERENSTEIN, or just easier to just put in Column of Honor in the search bar and add me there. I'm tweeting about all sorts of stuff from Ring of Honor to the independent scene. And also Podcast of Honor. Be sure to check that out. We're going to try to do one in after the Field of Honor show this week. And really looking forward to the Brooklyn show. Finally, a Ring of Honor show in Brooklyn. I'm happy about that. So that's what I got to plug. And GST, take us home with some plugs for pwponderings.com and anything else we have to offer on that website.
Absolutely. So as always, we want to thank you guys for checking us out here on the ROH Retrocast. As always, if you're listening to us on iTunes or Stitcher, please leave a 4 or 5 star review. Get that algorithm going, and we really appreciate it. And of course, our High Spots link, if you just use pwponderings.com/highspots, and you can bookmark that. You can buy tons of Ring of Honor, PWG, all those DVDs at High Spots, and then it does a little bit of a kickback for us as well to help keep the site going. In terms of things to plug, I'll probably have a Ring of Honor Aftershock and some reviews going up fairly soon. And of course, like you guys said, we'll have a Podcast of Honor up right after Field of Honor, and then we're going to be previewing some other stuff. At the end of the day, I'm gearing up for Bola. I'm going down there to PWG live. It's going to be a fun 6-hour drive. So
this guy again, he's pulling that out again.
I am. So it's going to be a good time. Expect lots of content on the website. And of course, we all appreciate that. Click on the links that are there for Amazon or our new WB sponsorship. If any of you guys actually buy WB stuff, we have codes there for that as well. So go check it out. Appreciate it.
All right, folks. We did it. We're going to see you again not too long from now. We're going to come up with another Retrocast, and I hope you guys will be there when we do it. So until then, bend your knees in tight, do the pelvic thrust, go and sing, and we'll talk to you again later on.